Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining AI the Docs in the API the Docs conference series. Thank you for taking the time to be here and for coming to listen to my talk and hopefully all of the other talks. I'm excited to be able to open this conference because, yeah, it's been unescapable. AI is this unescapable thing the last couple of years, and I think that we've all been thinking about like, what is this going to change and how are things going to evolve? And in this first talk of the day, I want to share with you some of the frameworks that I've been using to think about the changes that are going to happen to developer portals specifically and web application more in general. The title of the talk is Rethinking Web Applications. I'm going to be talking about tool spaces and their affordances, and more about that in a moment. Before I get started, I also want to call out this weird moment in time that we're currently in, where at least my LinkedIn feed is full with, on one hand, people that are like incredibly excited about AI and how it's going to change everything, and the thing it's amazing. And then on the other hand, there's people that are like, oh, this is all one big lie, and this is useless, and or it's evil even sometimes. So there's this bipolar mind space that is out there, and personally, I'm trying to hold both in my head, to look at the good things, like what you see on the left here. That's Notebook LM. It's a tool from Google that's amazing. It saves our team hours of work, I think, or even things that we normally wouldn't have time to do, we are now able to do. Just reviewing lots and lots of information and like pulling out interesting information to help our customers to do a better job in what we're doing. I also use it for preparing this talk, to like collect information and to digest it. So there's, on the one hand, there's this amazing stuff, and then on the other hand, there's this stuff, like this glass of wine that should be full until the brim. And I don't know if you've tried it before, but if you try to ask an LLM to generate an image with a glass full of wine, you never get a full glass. You always get something that's like this. And it shows that even though that there's a lot of really interesting applications for this technology, there's also some areas where it's not all roses and moonshine. I don't know if that's the right saying. What I mean is, there's this duality where there's some really interesting applications, and then there's a whole bunch of hype also. So then what I hope that this conference will help with, and also this talk, is to make the distinction between these two, so that you can start to recognize, like, where is AI, where are generative AI models really useful, and where should you be careful and watch out. This talk is about looking ahead and trying to reason about the future of developer portals specifically. And software has always been this really fast evolving world. Like I've been joking with fellow entrepreneurs. It's like, in software, every 10 years, you're reinventing your business. And like the last 2 years definitely feel like that, where suddenly a lot of the paradigms that we were relying on suddenly start shifting and changing. And what started with this chat-like interface, and this is Gemini. So this is Gemini and not ChatGPT. But what started with this interface and then launched this range of assistants, like this one is in Drupal, the CMS that we work with, and that allow this experimental user interfaces, like Agent Space from Google, where people are kind of exploring what are the new UIs that have become possible because of large language models and the technologies they're enabling. There's this constant flux and evolution that's happening, and it feels that a lot of things are changing really fast. And the question that I'm asking myself a lot, and that people are asking me also is like, so how are developer portals or web applications more in general, how are they going to change? How do these new agentic patterns change how software work? What are the best form factors for using this new technology? And then also, I think for me, the most important question that is maybe not said or asked by a lot of people, but what are the creative constraints that have just become invalidated? What is fundamentally shifting because something is now different? And how does that affect the rest of us? And the really difficult question or hard question some people in our space have been asking is like, so what's going to happen to developer portals and documentation portals? We will still be visiting documentation portals? Or is documentation just going to be wrapped into an AI bot or like an AI agent that you're going to bring into other places, and we're not even going to visit documentation pages anymore? Those are the questions that I want to answer. Are developer portals going to become obsolete? Are they going to collapse into an archive with an AI bot in front? Or are they going to be repurposed and become something completely different? This is the question that I want to answer in this talk today. To answer that question, I want to introduce you to three concepts. Two that I've taken a lot of, that I've been developing myself based on work from Alicia Guerrero, and I'll refer to some of my sources a little bit later. But that I've been thinking a lot about, like, how is this changing, and developing it as concepts to be able to explain the changes. And then the third one, affordances, that I'll talk about in a moment. So I want to make the distinction in this presentation between tools and spaces. What I mean with that, what I see here on the left are a bunch of different types of tools. There are things that you can take with you and then do things with. And then spaces are places that you can go into and then do things also with those spaces. And the difference between these two is that tools are self-contained artifacts that you can bring into a work context. Like, for example, a knife or a hammer, or in the digital world, a microservice, an API, or an agent. They're they're self-contained, and when you bring them into your context, they change what you can do, but they don't fully immerse you into a context. Like spaces. Spaces are immersive systems of artifacts that create a work context. Like, for example, in physical world, a house. It creates a context in which people live. A bathroom is a context in which you brush your teeth or you take a shower. A kitchen is a context in which you cook. But on the digital world, mobile apps, web applications, CRMs, ERPs are all contexts in which you do certain jobs that you're trying to get done. You buy these spaces, these artifacts, or you use them to be able to do a certain job. And both spaces and tools change how we behave as a person by changing our context. As I said, Alicia Guerrero and her book Context Changes Everything talks very deeply about this, much deeper, more like philosophically sound than I can do, I think. But the interesting story here is that we as people, we become different depending on the context that we are in. So, for example, if you know how to cook, if you have the capability to cook, and you enter into a kitchen, then you become a cook. If you know how to drive and you go sit in the front of a car, you become the driver. But if you know how to cook or you know how to drive and you don't have these contexts that allow you to do that action, you're not really a driver or a cook. You're just a person who has some capabilities. And tools like knives, they're used outside of these space contexts in which we normally do our work. Like, for example, you can take a knife outdoors and you can do barbecue, you can cook outside. But that's a lot of work, and it can be actually quite hard. And there are certain recipes and there are certain things that you can't do outdoors, or it's much, much harder. And it's much, much easier to do inside of your kitchen, where you have all these tools available around you, and this context that shifts maybe even how you behave and what you want to do. Maybe you want to eat healthy foods. If you like cooking and you like cooking healthy foods, then maybe the fact of just moving into your kitchen makes you feel like eating healthy food and preparing it. Some tools can also become spaces. Like, for example, a tent is a tool that you can put up and then go sit inside, and it becomes a space that enables you to sleep or to create a private space. Digital tools are also like that. Digital tools like a phone and the mobile apps on your phone, or a computer and the web apps on your computer or on your phone, they can become these immersive spaces, virtual spaces, where your attention gets absorbed and you forget about everything that's around you, and you can like fully focus on that context, that digital context that's made available to you. And this is this thing that we've been doing for the last 25 years, where we've been taking physical spaces and we've been replacing them with virtual spaces. And this has been like transformative for the economy, where in the past there might be one like super rare specialty shop, maybe in your capital of your country, or depending if you're from the US, maybe in like a regional, in your state capital or something like that. But if you were from a small town, you had to travel a very long way to go and reach and to find those special goods that maybe you couldn't find anywhere else. Now today, with virtual spaces, that has been transformed. This transformation has been going on for a while, but now there's a new transformation that's happening. Because a lot of these software applications that we've built in the past are spaces by necessity instead of choice. What do I mean with that? If you look at all of these, and this is just a couple of screenshots from web applications, we've, like the last 25 years, like around, I think it started around 2000, with the growth of the SaaS business model, software applications have become this online web application. Before we had like software applications on computers and so on, so it's not new, but there's been this really big drive to try to turn software, almost all software, into a space that you can buy access to. And that was a great business model, and it was very beneficial, but it had a couple of caveats. Because spaces are primarily really useful, like software web and mobile applications are typically built as spaces, because there's a couple of really cool things, like the SaaS business model, as already alluded to. Product-led growth is something that is enabled by this form factor. Spaces are habit forming, so they can work also using monetizations, using attention economy. You can secure a space in a sandbox on your phone or on your browser, and you can become familiar with a space, and then build this habit of like going back to that space and rechecking in, but some of these spaces are not designed for everybody. Some of these spaces are designed for some of their users as a primary target group, and some of the constituents are pushed back. Sometimes that's like just how things are, like in a CRM today. Sales managers love CRMs because they give them insights into how their teams are doing. CEOs definitely love CRMs because they help them to keep track of like what's going on in their pipeline. Salespeople might not like CRMs as much because they force them to fill in forms and do all this bureaucratic stuff to keep the company updated about what's going on in the company. Some spaces, like some of the platform spaces, like social media spaces, are deliberately made worse to extract additional value. So if you're familiar with Cory Doctorow's work on enshittification, he talks about how all of these dominant platforms eventually start making things work so that they can extract more value from from all the different sides of the market. While documentation portals are not or typically not suffering from enshittification, so they're normally not on purpose made worse, normally, they are still perceived as tyrannical spaces. They are spaces not by choice, but by necessity, at least today. What I mean with that. We saw this really interesting thing very early on when we started building developer portals. So we're now 10 years in the dev portal space and longer in the documentation space. But very early on, we saw that because we wanted to build developer portals that were not only for technical users. We wanted developer portals that were equally interesting for business users and for technical users. And then we saw that these personas had different needs in terms of authoring experiences. A business person does not mind using a content management system normally because it gives them control. They can see how the information will be published, so they can verify. They can check in and see how the customer is going to see the information. But technical users, developers, they don't really like going into content management system and updating documentation. They prefer to just do their job in their IDE and then automatically push through CI/CD the documentation into the system. So there's this bifurcation of two different needs. So what we built in our product, we solved this by having page builders for the business personas that use the CMS, and then CI/CD pipelines for developer documentation that they can use to automatically push documentation to the system. And but this was kind of like a foreshadowing of what I think the big transformation is that is going to happen like in the next probably in the next decade or so, is that there is a choice now. And this choice was already there with APIs. Like as you can see here, when you use when you get the choice between CMS interface or API-driven CI/CD, that was possible, but that choice was still required some manual work, some development work to be able to be enacted. What I think is going to happen is that after APIs, now also agents are going to help to turn applications into tools, or at least to turn parts of the journeys that are happening with software into tools, so that the places where you're still using, where web application is still, or where software is still being used as a space, is going to be by design and by choice and not by necessity. What I mean with this is a video from Superface, and Zdeněk Nemetz is going to talk tomorrow, and he's one of our keynotes. Warmly recommend him. Really smart guy, lots of interesting insights. He published this video of their tool where you can record a text, like you're a salesperson. You just had a call with a customer. You record it, and then you submit it, and it's starts to check out all the entities that are inside the message, and then it suggests the activities that need to happen to do this bureaucratic work, to keep track of all the information that you've just collected. This kind of interaction is already easier. It is still so. You can imagine how this kind of interaction could happen in like a Slack space or something like that, where you're already having conversations with your colleagues, where you just give a report really naturally to your colleagues, and then the processing happens to go and send off the information to the right place throughout the system. And that's super cool. This is what is possible with agentic, the agentic software pattern. Now, you could, when first you see this, you're like, oh my God, this is going to change everything. All software is going to become agentic. I was thinking a lot about this because it has a huge impact on our business. And what I realized is that this is not true, because there are some cases where this makes a lot of sense, and there are some cases where this doesn't make sense. And you can probably already guess is this difference between tools and spaces. So while APIs make it possible for applications to become spaces for a tool for one audience, you can still keep applications as a space for another audience, so that you have this choice now where you can say, okay, for this job that my customers or my audiences need to do, I'm going to design a space. For this job, I'm going to design an agentic tool that can be used inside of the context of the customer. Or I'm going to design an API that they can use to build their own agentic tool inside of their own context. So then how do you decide where you should use a space and where you should use a tool? So I think the primary decision point, I think, is to ask yourself, is this job, this capability that I'm exposing here, or this capability that is being used by a certain person to perform a certain job, is that job going to be done somewhere else? Or is that going to happen in some other context where they're already like really immersed? In that case, you want to have a tool, because a tool allows them to take that capability into their context and to compose it with other tools, to stay in flow, to reduce the friction, to adapt the tool to the context rather than to go into the context of the tool, of the application, and to be more unintrusive. On the other hand, if a user would benefit from returning to a familiar UI, like for example, if you're checking reports, yes, you can generate reports automatically with AI, but you don't want to be looking at a new report every single time. You want that report to be to become familiar, so that as a manager, you start to recognize it and you know where to look to see the interesting information. And like, yes, AI could be used to generate the same reports every single time, but that's not really what it's really meant for. Like, in that case, you are using a space kind of concept. You're just pulling it in on the fly. So spaces are best when you need to create a persistent, specialized context. When you want to create an immersive context where people can do a process that is well-defined, and where they can trust the system because it's something that keeps coming back, and they know that if they go in that place, it's going to be the same thing that they're going to see, and it's not suddenly going to be changed. And that can become like a memorable destination that can be like, okay, when I need to do this job, I go there. So there's this shift happening, I think, of user expectations, or will happen, where what used to be all spaces, software was mostly spaces, will become little by little replaced with more deliberate choice between tools and spaces. And that users will prefer to use software that integrates with their existing workflows where that makes sense, so that they don't have to keep switching contexts to do their jobs. So I think that there will be less reliance on GUI-based interactions, more emphasis on APIs, but like not a full shift. It's going to be like, I think, more of both at the same time. Another shift that's going to happen, I think, is that there will be a shift from features to affordances. What do I mean with that? So if you're not familiar with the word affordances, affordances is this really weird word. It's kind of like features, but an affordance is normally not a property of a product alone. So like a feature is a property of a product, is a function of a product, and a product owner can design a feature for a product. But an affordance is this social technical thing that sits in between the users and the tool. And so affordances are things that users discover, that through interaction with a tool, they as they start adapting to the system and the workflows, they learn new things that they can do with their existing tools. And affordances are defined by the how the users are using the software. So they're normally not designed. Like you can try to design an affordance, but normally you'll design a feature and then hope that people will actually use it and turn it into an affordance. Also, well-designed software should have this flexibility that allows for use cases that are not foreseen, and that where you can like repurpose an API or an agent to do something in an unexpected way. So what I think, one of my other prediction is that value will shift from features to affordances. That in the future, tools will, where the discovery of affordances for tools will become a more important part, maybe even more important than the features that the product owners are building, because it's the unexpected things that are people doing in a different context that they're doing their work that is going to become, I think, more important. What does that mean for developer portals? So I went back in time to one of the first strategy presentations that I did. So all of these things still hold. Developer portals are still self-service hubs. They're still trust signals. You still want a developer experience by removing friction. There's still all these different audiences that you need to cater to. All of this still holds, but we need to start looking at what is best served with a tool and what's best served with a space. And then what does that mean for the affordances that can be discovered? But overall, I think documentation will become even more important. Documentation for affordances, not only for features. And that means, I think, that we will need to do all three things. We'll need to enable third-party AI search by making a documentation available for third-party AIs to give answers to questions from people in other contexts. We'll need to be able to have better search inside of portals so that people can go there and ask questions, especially if there's a big body of content. And we'll need to rethink the journeys that we facilitate for the different groups and audiences that we are serving with a portal. So practically, portals are evolving and they need to be adapted to your strategy. That means that all these different types of portals that I've identified in a previous webinar, you probably want to build some sort of hybrid between some of these, and you need to think about the constituents and the jobs that they need to do to create a successful developer portal. Think about what are the jobs you should do in a tool and which should happen in a space. And last but not least, you should always first start with business bright spots, both for your AI projects and your developer portal, to create business value from the get-go so that you can have lasting executive support all the way from the beginning until the end of your journey. If you want to learn more, so these are, go and have a look in our archives. This is Mark Bergauer. It's with him that he's my teacher on complexity. It's with him that I had the API Resilience podcast. He taught me a lot of stuff that influenced a lot of the thinking here. My stakes are my own. I think Mark probably has some comments on some of the things I said. But yeah, go check out those resources. Really, really interesting stuff. And go check out Alicia Juarero's book, Context Changes Everything, because that's much deeper than what I presented and really, really insightful that changes your world for you. With that, I'll wrap up. You can find me scanning this QR code, connect me on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect to the rest of the community. Also happy to do a one-on-one dev portal strategy in case anybody's interested. And that's all.